Hello there, my name's Rowan, and in this session I'll be explaining how to get started using Padlet and how it can be used by educators to support blended and online learning. Padlet is an online tool that you can use to create a virtual notice board that can display information in a range of formats. It is designed with collaboration in mind, but there are settings to help you decide in which ways, if at all, visitors can contribute. It can be used either in an app or within a browser, and it works on most devices that might be used for home learning, including mobile phones. Padlet could be a great way of sharing prompts for activities that your pupils can access whether at home or at school. Before you start using Padlet, there are a few useful questions to ask yourself. Will pupils themselves be contributing to the notice boards, or will you just be using it as a way of sending out activities? How might you keep your notice board safe and sufficiently private? Who will be able to see your board? Will it only be shared with families, or would you like to share it more widely? Will you be collaborating with colleagues when putting together your Padlet wall? How often do you intend to use your wall? It could be updated weekly or daily or on an ad hoc basis depending on how you intend to use it. Making an account is easy. Start by visiting the Padlet website, either by searching for Padlet in a search engine or by visiting padlet.com. Next, click Sign Up for free, and you'll then be able to enter your school email address and choose a password to get started. You can also create an account automatically by signing up with an Apple, Google, or Microsoft login, which might be particularly helpful if you're using any of these services for your online learning platform. You'll then be asked to choose your membership package. Of course, the Pro membership does come with some advantages, notably the ability to create as many Padlet boards as you like. But there's a lot you can do with a basic membership, and many teachers find that it's easiest to just use the same boards and edit them from week to week. So we'll stick with this membership for my demonstration. Once you've chosen your membership, you'll be taken to the home page. Here you can get started by clicking the pink Make a Padlet button. Next, you'll be prompted to choose a layout for your Padlet. We'll talk more about these different options later, but to begin with, I'm going to select Wall. This layout will neatly pack all my content together automatically, but I can move it around afterwards if I prefer a different arrangement. And here's my new empty Padlet. I've been automatically given a background and a title for my Padlet, but I can change these later in the Modify menu. I can find this by clicking the little cogwheel in the top right-hand corner of the page. Within this menu, I can change the title and the description of my Padlet depending on how I want to use it. I can also change various other options like the wallpaper, the font, or the colour scheme. When your Padlet is created, it's assigned a random URL which just contains a random collection of characters, but you can edit it in this box, and that's a really useful way of creating a URL that's a bit more memorable. To do this, I simply click in the box and edit the text to something that relates to my Padlet wall, and then I can click the copy button to share my link more easily. There are a few different ways that your pupils can engage with your Padlet wall. However, there are some important factors that you may need to keep in mind. Consider whether you need attribution above posts that are made by pupils. Do you want their names to be visible? And it's important to consider who will be able to see the Padlet if the answer is yes. You may wish to enable comments. This allows pupils to respond to the posts that are placed on the wall, and that might mean offering peer feedback to another pupil, or it might be a response to an activity, either an answer to a question or an opportunity for them to ask for further explanation. There are various ways that pupils can react to posts, such as by grading them, starring them, or upvoting them, liking them, and that might be something that you would want to include. There's an option to require approval, which is a really useful way of allowing you to moderate posts that pupils make, though it's important to point out that although you can moderate posts that they make, you can't moderate the comments themselves. For this reason, the profanity filter might come in handy. This is a way that you can automatically replace any bad words with emojis, which is quite good fun. You may find that encourages pupils to experiment a little bit with their language. However, hopefully this won't be necessary, as you'll be able to encourage pupils to use a Padlet board in a constructive, appropriate way. Once you're happy with your settings, you can click Save and you're ready to begin posting. To create a post, simply double-click anywhere on the board or press the pink circle in the bottom right-hand corner with the plus icon inside it. You should find a small window appears and invites you to add a title to your post, as well as asking you to write something. It also shows you some of the different ways that you can add content to a Padlet board. So firstly, you can upload a file. Secondly, you can add a link to a piece of content, and when you do this, Padlet automatically retrieves an image or graphic from the web and displays it nicely. You can search Google for, perhaps search Google Images for a picture. You can add a photo of your own or take a photo on some devices. And if you press the three dots, then you'll see that there are some other options as well. These include doing a doodle drawing, recording a short video, recording your screen, or simply recording your voice. This can offer a lower bandwidth solution for explaining activities. And here you can see how the Padlet begins to look as more and more posts are added. As you can see, it allows you to present a range of content in a really simple and accessible way. In the example we looked at, we saw the wall format, which can be a really helpful way of gathering ideas or presenting information. But I'll show you the other ways that you can also use a Padlet using some of the different formats that are also available. This example is a canvas layout, and as you can see, it allows you to place your posts anywhere on the board, and it also allows you to connect different posts together. So you can use this as a kind of mind mapping tool, or as in this case, as a way of creating a diagram showing a life cycle. This format is called a stream, and in this one, posts will appear in a kind of vertical column, and each new post will always be added to the top. This can be quite useful if you think that a lot of the users who are viewing the Padlet are going to be looking at it through a smaller device, such as a phone. This layout is called a grid format, and as you can see, it's quite similar to the wall format that we already looked at, except that it arranges posts specifically in these sort of horizontal lines across. Again, it can be a nice way of presenting and gathering information. In this example, a little art gallery that you might use to share your class's work. This layout is called the shelf format, and this one is quite a useful way of kind of organising and presenting information, because as you can see, it allows you to add titles at the top of a series of different columns so that you can organise things into different categories. And this one is called a back channel. It's a bit like a stream, except instead of going from bottom to top, posts are added from top to bottom. And it's sort of designed to sort of simulate social media a little bit. And with that in mind, I have enabled the reaction like in this particular example, showing you how pupils might be able to click to show that they like or approve of a particular post. So this one might be something to consider a little bit more as a kind of social way of keeping the class in touch rather than as a way of sharing work. This one is a timeline format, and I think this can be a really useful way of representing a sequential series of activities that might represent maybe a project or maybe a single lesson. As you can see in this example, I've also added a final post called an exit ticket, and this is actually a link to a Google form. But you'll see that when you post a Google form in Padlet, it actually gets embedded in the Padlet and you can complete it without having to leave the page. So it means that you can kind of get everything done sort of in one place and things don't get too confusing. The share menu at the top of the page is where you can control exactly how public or private you would like your Padlet wall to be. There are 4 main options, and as you can see, in this case, I've chosen secret. This means that I can share a link to my Padlet wall, but it's not searchable to anybody that doesn't know exactly what the URL is. However, once somebody has the link, they don't need a password to be able to view the Padlet page. You can see that there are other options available too, such as private, which means that you have to add specific people in order to allow them to view the board, or you can make it password protected so that somebody just needs a link and to know the password in order to get into it. Or if you don't think that any security is necessary, such as maybe if you've gathered a collection of pieces of work that have already been anonymised and you want to be able to share them via your school Twitter, then you could use the public option. At the very bottom of this menu is the visitor permissions option, and there are 3 visitor permissions that you can choose between. So you can either have it so that visitors can only read what is on the Padlet page, and that means they won't be able to add their own posts, although you may be able to enable comments if you want them to interact with it in some way. You can also allow visitors to post to the Padlet board, and again, for this you can moderate their posts, so you can check whether or not you're happy with them before you allow them to go up. And you can also allow them to edit posts. So this would mean that if one child made a post on the wall, another child might be able to edit it. So it's important to think about whether or not that's going to be useful for the way that you would like to use this tool. There are also several different options for exactly how you can share your Padlet wall, but it's important to note that these are really all just different ways of sharing its unique link. So that might be copying the link directly, it might be generating a QR code that takes you to that URL, it could be embedding it on a website. There is an option to share on Google Classroom, which again is really useful if you're using Google Classroom, but actually all that this really does is it automatically generates an assignment within your class, and it adds your Padlet as a link within that assignment. And that's something that you could do manually, but it's nice that there is a button there that makes it a little bit easier. And I mentioned that because if you're not using Google Classroom, you could do exactly the same thing in whatever platform you are using, simply by copy and pasting the link to the Padlet wall. However you share your Padlet, it's important to keep in mind the privacy settings that you've chosen for it. So, for example, is it a good idea to share it on social media if it isn't password protected? Possibly not. And if you are sharing it on an internal group, maybe you're sharing it in your Seesaw class, will the pupils need to be able to add a password in order to access it? And if they will, is that password something that they can easily remember and type given their age? If you've chosen to use a free Padlet account, then that means that you'll only be able to have up to 3 Padlet walls active at a time. However, once you've finished with a wall, you can actually export it in any one of a range of different formats. So you can save it as a JPEG image, you can save it as a PDF document, which will contain clickable links to any of the content that was within the Padlet wall. You can save it as a CSV file, a spreadsheet, or you can even directly print it. So if you are using the free account, you could simply export the content of the Padlet and then delete all of the posts and start again for the next set of activities. That might be something that you do on a weekly basis. Another benefit of that is that you only need to have one link. So you might have just one Padlet wall, which is one URL that the children need to have access to. And it's simply the content on the wall that changes week to week. They don't need to have a new link. You can then use any exported files for your monitoring or evidence purposes. It's useful to be aware of how you can delete a Padlet wall. So you simply do this on the main Padlet page by going to the 3 dots in the corner, and you'll see the delete button right at the bottom of the list. I hope this brief session has been useful. Please do keep an eye on our BlendEd website for more information and for more courses that we'll be creating in the coming months.